Coming forward to expose problems at the South Dakota Developmental Center in Redfield.
The center is facing a worker shortage with nearly 50 open positions. One former worker, Paul Register, quit his job last month to go public with safety concerns and problems with management at the center. Now others are backing up his story.
This current employee asks that her identity not be revealed because she is afraid of retaliation. She says that when she complained to Human Resources about a problem with the conduct of a colleague, she was the one who was punished.
It's a way to keep people quiet and keep people in line and, not to stir things up.
Now, several former employees are also coming forward to expose a number of issues at the South Dakota Developmental Center.
In tonight's Eye on Kelloland, Angela Kenneke sits down with the 4 women who say not only does improper training put employees at risk, but some of the developmentally disabled people who live there are also being hurt when rules aren't followed.
These stately buildings sit on the 90-acre campus of the South Dakota Developmental Center in Redfield. But it's what's going on behind these walls that 4 former workers say the public needs to know.
I've been bit, I've been kicked, I've been spit in the face. I've gone onto dorms where we've been called, and I've seen chunks of blonde hair from staff that have been ripped off their head.
I've been bit on every limb but my left leg. I've been punched in the face. I was headbutted in the chest to the point where it tore the cartilage off the sternum. And the doctor said it was basically like an injury a football player would have.
Stacy Wellnitz and Jerry Gallup were crisis intervention specialists at the center. It was their job to get a violent client under control. They say they knew what they were signing up for, but that the real problem wasn't the client. Rather, it was a lack of training of staff and inconsistent policies by management.
There were people that could do, something wrong and get fired, but you'd have somebody that was higher up that do something that was even more against policy and procedure, and they would be allowed to stay there.
According to the Code of Ethics, it says that abuse, neglect, and exploitation of an individual is not tolerated. Then no matter who it is, it should not be tolerated. It should be one consistent decision across the board, in my opinion, and it was all over the map.
Former behavior therapist Billy Jo McCool agrees. She was interviewed for the job by a clinical director who had a PhD.
And I thought, gosh, I really want to work here. So
McCool wasn't there long before that clinical director left and was never replaced. Then Assistant Director Jan Banghart stepped in.
I had never seen that any place I'd ever worked where someone with her education would direct master's level therapist work. I've never seen it done.
McCool says after that there were other things that she'd never seen during her years on the job. She says she was treating 23 sex offenders on the floor that she was assigned. According to the state's own rules, clients of different ages, functional levels, or social needs should not be housed together.
Quite a number of people who had other kinds of disabilities who were not sex offenders, and they were all housed together. Not only was that inappropriate, it was difficult for the staff to manage 2 types of individuals like that on one floor.
Were other clients often victims of these people?
Yes.
Can you explain that?
No, I can't explain that. I don't know why that was happening.
McCool says things got so bad, she decided to resign.
Now, you have to follow an ethical guideline, and that was not being followed out there. Poor decisions were being made regarding the treatment of the people who lived there, and you really didn't have any input anymore. You couldn't, I didn't feel like I could say what I thought should happen, and anybody would listen or that it would ever come to fruition.
This was my home away from home. Really.
After 30 years on the job as a house parent for the developmentally disabled, Shelda Johnson retired in 2009. But she came back to work because she missed the people she cared for. She was trying to stop a large disabled woman in a wheelchair from hurting herself or others when Johnson was injured.
I held that wheelchair so she wouldn't flip it over, break her hip, or hurt the peers. That's why I did that. But while I was doing that, it just, my shoulder went all to pieces.
Johnson says she'd had surgery and physical therapy and hoped to return to the job. However, she wasn't given that option. Instead, she was told since she was off work for 3 months, she was being let go.
So he fired you?
Yeah, I was fired. So
How did you feel about that?
I felt pretty bad because I've been out here all these years.
239 injured employees filed workers' comp in 2015, resulting in $243,000 in claims. And the number of severe injuries are up dramatically in the last 2 years. Currently, the center is struggling to fill nearly 50 open positions.
They should have just said, well, sorry about what happened to you, but we'll see you when you get well.
There's a lot of training that does occur.
Just last week, Director Jan Banghart announced her retirement effective immediately. The state says she was not asked to leave despite worker complaints and a petition protesting an unsafe working environment by 88 employees presented to the Department of Human Services. Barb Ablin, the former assistant director, is now serving as the interim director of the center. I asked the Department of Human Services for an interview for the story, but I was denied. However, it did provide me with a document that contained the analysis and action plan for the center. That plan includes updating policies and procedures, more safety training for staff, and evaluating the programs for the developmentally disabled who live there, as well as finding alternative placements for people with criminal behaviors.
Do you think the state's doing enough to fix the problems out there?
No, because I think it just goes deeper. I think there's a lot more people that know what's going on, and nobody's saying anything. And the people that are suffering are the staff and the people supported.
And Banghart's departure does little to ease these women's concerns.
I do believe there are other people out there who are culpable for some of the things that have been happening out there because they did nothing to stop it.
The women say by speaking out, they hope to be the catalyst for real change that will benefit the current staff and the developmentally disabled people they serve. With Eye on Kettleland, I'm Angela Kennecke.
DHS is looking at making $623,000 in cuts at the Redfield Center this year. Former employee Paul Register has organized union meetings for certain workers at the facility. We have put the entire DHS action plan on the website attached